Game Demo!
Hey folks, Sean McInnes here, and it is time for your daily demo. We've got Dead Space 2 Severed, the upcoming single-player DLC for the recently released Dead Space 2, one of my personal favorite games of 2011 so far. We've got Scott Probst here from Visceral, who's here to show us it. Scott, thanks for joining us.
No problem, thanks for having us.
So why don't we go ahead and get started with the game here as you're sort of easing us into the tension. Tell us what Severed is all about.
Sure, so Severed's going to tell the story of Gabe Weller, who's a character from Dead Space Extraction, and Gabe Weller's going to be going through a parallel story to sort of the story that Isaac went through in the single-player campaign of Dead Space 2. So within Severed, you're going to see Gabe Weller go through the Titan mines, and then he's going to backtrack through the Titan mines into the hospital, which you'll remember from the opening of Dead Space 2.
All right, let's go ahead and let's start walking through and see what types of bad guys are around the corner.
They're all over the place.
So in terms of how Gabe controls and plays, what are the primary differences between him and Isaac Clarke?
So the big difference between Gabe and Isaac himself are the fact that they have different roles. So Isaac is an engineer by trade and Gabe is a security officer. So given that he's a security officer, we've armed him with a pulse rifle. So Gabe's gameplay is going to be a little bit more focused on the action.
Okay.
So you're going to see a lot of enemies coming out and sort of these big action epic moments with Gabe, and we're going to focus a lot on the fact that he's a security officer by trade and the fact that he can kind of take this action to space.
But yeah, we see right off the bat there, he's still got stasis, he's still got TK, so those very core central mechanics of Dead Space 2 are still a part of Severed, right?
Absolutely. We didn't want to take any of that away from players, right? Players have always loved and known those mechanics with Dead Space, so he continues to have the same mechanics as Isaac would, stasis, kinesis, they function in the same way, but again, it's just sort of the pacing and the combat and the design of the levels that's going to change for the experience of Severed.
Now how about necromorph types? Are we going to see any types of necromorphs that we didn't see in the main campaign in Dead Space 2?
Absolutely. So one of the main necromorph types that you will see in Severed, which is actually making a reappearance from Dead Space, the original game, is the Twitcher. And we just saw a little bit of him a second ago when the Infector was infecting him. And we'll see a little bit more here in a second.
You've got one of them little guys behind you.
Yeah, the pack, they tend to creep up out of nowhere.
Oh! See, this is a very, very distinct departure from how I played the campaign in Dead Space 2. I just maxed out my Ripper, and I was just a one-man tank, just running around, sawing enemies in half.
So once we take out this pack, get him to lose his head there, this guy here is the Twitcher, and you'll be able to see why he's named the Twitcher. He's a very fast-paced guy. Got the flashlight on his head, which adds to the sporadicness of the guy, and he'll be cruising all around the map.
Yeah, you kind of see, like, the necromorphs in this game, they are, or at least they were people, and you can kind of tell, like, we're in a mine, and that guy was obviously a miner because he's got that, like, flashlight on, right?
Absolutely, yep. And you'll see a little bit of that, the different combat as we go through Dead Space Severed. You're going to see some of these big action moments where you might not necessarily be fighting against a necromorph. So here we're getting into a fun little sequence after the initial mine encounter. We're going to call this elevator shaft down here.
I don't want to spoil Dead Space 2, but elevators are rarely a safe proposition in that game.
True, but they're a must for transportation.
That's true. You gotta take them. Necessary evil.
How else are you gonna get there, right?
Calm down, Gabe. I've got your back. Nothing will happen to Lexine. You have my word. All right, new orders. Get to the gunship.
So a few minutes ago, I lost this one, but maybe I can win this time.
Get to that ship.
Thank you, Rick. I owe you. What around?
Uh-oh. This here is one of those moments where if you're at home playing this game with like surround sound speakers, you just hear the screeching all over the place.
Yep. Some hanging combat, fan favorite.
All right, nice. I have faith in you, Scott. I think you can do it.
Hopefully. One more, I think. Oh, reload. It's always when you think there's one more and then 3 more come.
Exactly. All right, looking good.
We got him this time.
So, one of the other questions that I had for you, is there any sort of crossover between Severed and the single-player campaign in terms of, you know, carrying over some type of save data or getting like any sort of weapons or suits or anything like that?
We don't have any sort of the save data that carries over between the two, but what we do have is we're telling the story through a parallel sort of experience, right? So you're going to go through similar areas that Isaac would have been as Gabe Weller, and you're also going to go through new and unique areas. So you'll be seeing these areas that you would have gone through in the single-player campaign and kind of referencing back to, oh, okay, maybe I was here before Isaac, and telling the story of where Isaac's journey took place.
Okay. So definitely some nods towards the single-player campaign.
Absolutely. Gabe's obviously got his own unique suit, different look than Isaac. Again, he's a security officer, so I had to make him look unique and feel unique to Isaac.
Uh-oh. Now this area here, obviously one of those places that you would have encountered in Dead Space 2 if you've played through the entire game now.
No spoilers, but yeah. Got a feeling something bad's coming. For some reason, those guys never get easy.
Those guys are tricky.
Yeah.
One last console to shut down, and then you should be able to head through that door, right?
Assuming nothing bad happens after the console activates, you know. I don't think it should. What's your take?
You know, Dead Space 2 definitely has a way of instilling faith in Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong.
Very true. Twitcher again. Vector. Creating new enemies for me.
At least those Twitchers are polite enough to wear those mining helmets so that you can see their flashlights in the dark.
Safety first, right? And after that, yep, we wrap up this encounter here.
All right, cool. Well, Scott, Dead Space 2 Severed looks great. I'm a big fan of the original Dead Space 2, definitely a hit. Enjoy that one, so very much looking forward to this. So can you let our audience know When is this DLC going to be available to download?
Absolutely. So the downloadable content for Dead Space 2 Severed will be available on March 1st on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360.
All right, cool. There you guys have it. That's your update on Dead Space 2 Severed. On with the rest of the show.